I think it's a magnificent and unusual and unique effort that these four people have put in to create what you just saw, and I think you probably all agree with me, right? Yeah. Okay, so I want to first address Jacob and Manon, and with a kind of pedantic question of how did this all come about? Where did you guys get together? How and why?
I think we've got to share the mic. Right, yeah, keep it brief, Jacob. Said the voice in my head. So I was very surprised to see Joel Meyerowitz, a big hero of mine, not at Photo London, but just on the streets of London, and was very excited. This is going back about 5 or so years, and so I thought, what do I say to an artist hero, and so I sort of thought about it whilst I followed Joel for a little while into some shops and out of them, and then just as I summoned the courage, I lost him, and I thought, well, that's that. But how exciting to tail Joel Meyerowitz. Anyway, then I saw Joel again, this time a couple of weeks later, but this time Joel was with Maggie, and I went and spoke with them briefly and thanked Joel for being such a hero. And then Joel introduced me to Maggie, and it was when I saw them as a couple and the dynamic that they have between them, this aura that you see in the film, that was something that went in very deep to me. And a couple of years later, during the pandemic, I came across Maggie's wonderful essays that she writes on her website, and I sort of fell in love with Maggie's writing, and the idea of a documentary about their relationship came into my thoughts. And then Manon and I, who are a married couple, got talking about what if we made this documentary together, and we had conversations with Maggie and Joel, and within a couple of months we started living with Maggie and Joel. Yeah. So, and we, for that over a year of filming, we would always live with Maggie and Joel whenever filming, which formed the most incredible trust and intimacy and relationship.
Okay. Outside, you mentioned the language of the film, and it was one of the great sort of discoveries for you, understanding language. I can relate to that. I often speak about the language of photography. But tell us what you mean by the language of the film. Okay.
Why don't we start with this one?
Okay. So the language of, so this was our first ever feature film and our first documentary. So both of us had our artistic practices. I hate the word practice. We both had our own practices in our individual work, but coming together, we sort of fell in love with the language of documentary, and were lucky enough to be mentored by some incredible producers as well. And as we were quickly reading the books on how to make a documentary, after they said yes, we thought, oh, now what? Now we have to learn. And along the way of learning, it sort of came to us that you find a language that feels right for the subjects, and you stick with it. And the visual language of the film was inspired by Joel's photography. Obviously in street photography, and especially in Joel's work, wider lenses lend themselves to telling the bigger picture, and often what's happening on the periphery of the frame is just as significant as what's happening in the middle. And so we realized by having these locked off shots where the camera doesn't move, but there's a kind of proscenium arch potential for all sorts of dynamics to unfold, that felt right for the visual language.
One of the great gifts about making a documentary about two people you don't really know much about is you get to discover all sorts of things about them, including the fact that Maggie is an incredible pianist and musician. And I remember the first week of us living with Maggie and Joel, after dinner one night, Maggie got on the piano and started tinkering, and we were like, oh my god, what is this? And it became apparent that we could use Maggie's music and inspire the compositions. that Diogo Strauss made and create a sonic landscape that was inspired by Maggie. So form meets content, and you know, when you're making a portrait about two artists, there's no better way than to imbue our DNA, our artistic DNA, the filmmaking DNA, with their DNA.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me throw maybe it's a tough one to Joel and Maggie with my notes. Would you say that your relationship has changed for the better, for the worse, or just different because of your involvement in making this film? You got it.
Rock on.
Absolutely. Yeah. We all of us have been through years in our lives where a year it was like just crammed with more than you could have anticipated, and as you could see from the film, that particular year had a lot of stuff going on. And during those kinds of moments, both the best and the worst comes out of us. But also to see a year of your life condensed into 100 minutes is actually quite horrifying at first. So the way that I feel the relationship has changed is that both of us, after several screenings, began to stop looking at ourselves and started looking at our behaviour. And obviously, as you can see, there were certain behaviours that we felt could really use some work. And I think that we've really concentrated on that in the last couple of years. And so I would say that while I don't think that any of us change completely, I think, you know, we are who we are, especially at this age. But when you recognise something about yourself that you don't like and that you would like to work on, it's progress, not perfection, right? It's never going to change completely. You're still going to react to situations the way that you've always reacted to them, but you get a chance to look at it a lot sooner and make a decision sooner to let that go and to make amends and apologise for behaviour that once you maybe would have held on to. So that was a big change for me. And then one last point, I think for me the biggest change that's affected our relationship is in seeing the film, having to see how much resentment I was holding. And I really didn't like that piece of myself at all. And I'm glad to say that that resentment has honestly completely washed away, which has made it a lot much more joyous, hasn't it, for us to share in each other's successes.
I'll add a little bit to that. I'm sure all of us in this room have seen changes in your own lives as you age. You look in the mirror one morning and you see a certain gesture or a face you have that reminds you of your mother or your father. And it's might even be startling to you. And this film did that for me in some ways. I saw some behavioral patterns that I picked up from my father. And I never really weighed them before. I thought it was his spirit and good humor and playfulness that I was bringing out. But in fact, there were other things that was about his relationship with my mother. And I saw that I, in some way, had fallen into patterns that weren't really serving us. We have a very open, honest relationship. Honesty is the core of, right from the beginning. Maggie once said to me, "Honesty is sexy." And I said, yeah, be honest and say what's on your mind. But nonetheless, time goes along and we do fall into patterns. And I think the film, the gift for me personally, is that it's relieved me of certain things that I fall into. And not that I'm completely cured, but I have an advantage now of recognizing it when it comes up, and I'm able to be even more honest and direct and open-hearted. So yeah, you learn.
Now, I think it's amazing in your incredible openness and honesty about the relationship and your amazing ability to to be kind of invisible and incredibly intimate at the same time, and record that. I mean, it's super special, and that's why everybody here is listening so intently. I mean, it's not your average documentary film, and you know, you're not your average people to be able to reveal yourself like you did, and learn from it and grow from it. It's an amazing experience. Okay, so I want to delve into that just a wee bit more. One question I wrote down was it uncomfortable to be revealing yourselves, and then I wrote, quote, to the bone, on film? You know, how does it, you know, how did you experience all those moments of intimacy that you're sharing on film?
I personally didn't feel any awkwardness, and I think that has to do with Jacob and Manon. When you say that they were invisible, in some ways they were invisible. I mean, they would mic us every morning, and the cameras were set up. Sometimes they were in the room, and sometimes they weren't. But there was an implicit trust that was just there right from the very beginning of the relationship between the four of us. And so it made it easy for Joel and I to just live our lives the way we live our lives. I was aware that we were exposing ourselves, of course, not in the moment, but after all, it was a film that was going to be put together and hopefully go out to the world. I did wonder how the confrontational scene would go over. I was actually prepared for some flack, especially for people who adore, understandably, Joel. I was worried about his daughter, who was very protective of him. But when she saw the film, she came up to me at the end and said, "You go, girl." So, yeah, no, I did. Actually, his brother said to me, "You had it coming, kid."
Would you mind? Part of the answer to that question is a technical answer. Today's cameras can be operated by your phone. You can start a Leica if you're in another room and you're watching what the camera sees on a monitor, and then suddenly something starts to happen. You just tell it to go, and it goes. And so that's another level of freedom in a way, because we didn't know necessarily when they were filming. So we just were ourselves. And once you establish that kind of give and take between yourselves and you forget about the camera, it makes for a new kind of documentary. It's not like they were tracking us all day long, moving around with us. They gave us a lot of room. Enough room so that Mana and I could cook together quite often. And that solidified our relationship.
That's great, but I do suggest that you don't repeat what you just said, and if you're ever asked this question again, you should say they were there the entire time filming. It was really hard.
I want to give away all the
sneak going.
Actually, we do wonder what times they were there that we didn't know about.
Since they could turn it on.
Okay, my last question, and then let's throw it out. I told you we weren't coming.
I know.
Okay, the film evolves into, the way I saw it, your film. Right? It's about both of you, but it becomes your film. It wasn't planned that way, but that's what happened, which is also, I think, one of the most beautiful things about the film is how it evolved in real time, Okay, so I'm going to address this to Joel. Excuse me. Joel, are you now ready for a tried and true bio-documentary about Joel the photographer? Is there room for that in your life at this point?
Actually, there isn't. I'm 87 years old, and do I really want to spend time, talking about myself to a filmmaker who wants to make a documentary. Having lived through this period, it's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I don't think I want to blab about my work and everything. I've been fortunate enough to be interviewed enough times that I probably have said everything I can say about photography. Although I tend to invent on the spot sometimes. So I've been asked a few times recently, but it hasn't felt right to me.
Okay.
My sense is it wasn't going to be anything like this.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, great.
Yeah, we had 2 cameras with us at all times, but we typically only shot with one. So we would set up a camera, and they're all still shots, so they're on tripod, they're pretty wide to allow life to unfold as it does. So we weren't limiting our scope and our view and their lives. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
This
is good. It's up the back.
It felt more important to let life unfold than us get in the way and try and capture things that we thought we should capture. So we kept it as low key and as lightweight as possible.
Can I just say something? I think, you've seen the quality of the film that they made. I mean, we may be the subjects, but they made the film. And when you think that it was a crew of 2, like,
Yeah.
My other half of the question was, how involved were you with the edits?
Very involved. We were very involved.
Yes.
not at all.
Not at all.
None. So Maggie and Joel saw the edit. We spent a year editing the film after spending a year of filming. And we invited Maggie and Joel to watch the edit a week before we signed off on the lock of the edit. And Maggie and Joel didn't have any notes. They felt like we had represented the year and the emotional journey that they had gone through accurately. Yeah.
Was there an agreement about that at the front? Did you say, we'd like to do this, trust us, and we'll show you at the end?
Well, they did say right at the beginning, you'll see it before we sign off on it. And if there's something you don't like, obviously,
We'll talk.
We'll talk about it.
I'll tell you the really hard part. I didn't butt in. I watched Jacob and Manon set up and do everything, and it didn't matter to me. I didn't want to go behind the camera every single shot and look and see if it was interesting. I just trusted that they're gonna know what to do. And so, for a person who lives with a camera in front of his face my whole life, that was actually easy to let go of. Easier than I thought.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, I just wanted to say it's absolutely beautifully shot. I thought the way that you framed all the scenes, particularly interested in the way you talked about using the periphery of the frame. I mean, there was one particular scene when Maggie was playing the piano and Joel, you were sat on the sofa and he was just in the corner. And it was, all of those things were just so... I can't even speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, this has been my massive passion. I met Joel about 26 years ago. I was in P-Town, Provincetown, a lot. And I knew that you lived there, and one day I went and knocked on your door, and you were so fantastic. You invited me and my cousin in, and we had coffee with you on your pier, and it was beautiful. And you just brought out redheads, which I'm very interested in as well. But then also, I know Jacob really well and Manon, and the most beautiful, 2 beautiful couples together. It must be an amazing, perfect match filmed together, the most intimate portraits. You saw that most amazing film. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Well, thank you.
I've got a question about the confrontational scene. It was very tense. We've watched all this beautiful love between you and lots of different emotions. It's very emotional, the whole film. I cried a lot. I think the people in the audience were crying. I saw tissues coming out. But with that confrontational scene, how did you know how long it should be? It was quite long. And, but were you thinking that you would edit it somewhere, or you just have to let Maggie release everything that she had to say, and it would be wrong to end that shorter.
It's an interesting question. We went back and forth on the length of it, and I think it was, this moment, this metaphor of Maggie finally having this moment to really speak her truth and be seen and be heard. But the most important part of that confrontation scene for me was the resolution. It was the humour that it ended on. That was a gift to me personally, who hasn't witnessed that in my personal life with the family that I grew up with. So to be able to witness two people resolve something after such an intense moment and be able to walk away from the situation still smiling and laughing, it just made sense that would be, if it was a gift for me, it would be a gift for another person.
Yeah.
I want to add something. Can I have the mic? Thanks. Okay. I'm the only person not trained as a Shakespearean actor or something. I project at the back of the room. I think also...
Joel says he thinks you should do stand-up.
Agreed.
Thank you. Anyway, so that... I don't like to call it a scene because it sounds wrong in the context of a documentary, but that fragment of time that we recorded felt significant to keep it going. This film has these kind of series of longer takes. Some of the moments are 2 or 3 minutes long, or sometimes longer, 5 minutes, and it made sense that when the shape of the whole film sort of locks into its sort of singular thesis in a way, that the apex of that should also be a longer, unedited piece of film, because in a way it's a kind of, it has its own 3-act structure, that moment, and it sort of symbolises everything that's sort of been inevitably coming, but also packs it with such a punch. So it felt criminal to do anything other than find exactly the moment that would serve that scene to end, and to just let it run, because it's so rare in life that you get such an articulate, sort of straight piece of human psychology, so beautifully put and so tender, and so that it was kind of that was the gem.
Time for one more. There's 3.
Let's go for it.
I had a question for Maggie. At the beginning, you talked about your resentment. It's beautiful, mind-blowingly beautiful film. You talked about how your resentment kind of washed away as a result of seeing yourself and seeing that dynamic in the film. But I'm curious about how much was about seeing the dynamic playing out in the film and how much was having it named and honored, because so much resentment is kind of privately born, and here it is this kind of public honoring of that, and that allowed you to kind of wash the resentment away and let it dissipate?
That's a really beautiful question and a great observation, because I'm not sure if it hadn't been for this film if it would have washed away. It wasn't like I wasn't aware of it before. I struggled with it. I was always genuinely happy for Joel's achievements. We can hold more than one feeling at a time, but I also, for all of my life, hankered after that kind of recognition for myself, and wasn't getting it to that extent. So I think that not only seeing my resentment, but to your point, the fact that I have now been seen. I'll tell you one little anecdote. When the film premiered in Copenhagen, Joel and I were walking to the cinema, and a man in his maybe 30s came running up to Joel, maestro, blah, blah, and I'm just standing there, as I do. And then he said to Joel, I'm going in to see your film now. I thought, I'm very surprised. At the end of the film, he came up to me in tears and apologized. So it's not just that I've been seen in that way, it's that I feel that the 4 of us have made something of value going out into the world that here and there is actually helping other people change a little bit. And so I feel like my purpose in life is complete. Simply that.
One more?
Yes.
Gentleman there. Just intrigued, the naturalness of the film is clearly what shines. I'm intrigued how much, did you have a lot of thoughts and pre-planned ideas that you wanted to actually come across in the film? Or was this all entirely kind of unscripted and off the cuff and just in the moment?
Are you asking that?
Well, I guess directed a bit more to, Maggie and Joel.
There was no script. There was nothing planned. It was just life unfolding, and the four of us living together. And
I think one of the themes, though, mortality, isn't anything that was scripted, but it's the reality. It's the reality that we live with. If you hit 70, 75, or whatever, you begin to realize that death, who's been way behind all your life, has been getting closer. And you're just going forward, and one day it's going to be there. It's going to meet you at that moment. And in our reality, this observation has been percolating more recently as we recognize our aging. And so it comes up in playful ways, in planning ways, in sensitive ways that one might feel about their oncoming demise. And so I think that Jacob and Manon, having woven that into the fabric of the film, adds a dimension, a real life dimension that every one of you in your time will come across. And then maybe you'll even remember that film?
I'll just add to
Yeah,
that.
please do.
The beauty of living with people for an extended period of time is that you get to see their habits, you get to see how they routinely do things, and you get to see what the conversations are. And we typically work from the subconscious to the conscious and work within that realm for quite a long time until we resolve what it is that we're trying to resolve. So our job is just to be there and observe.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.